I'm Becky, and today I'm going to go over making a flapper costume headband, which is essentially trim of sequins. Yes, they do make these. Already bought. This is 24 inches. And before you start such an enterprise, you want to make sure to measure your head. Take your tape measure, wrap it around. And my head is 21 inches about. And this is 24 inches because I got to have some room for the seam allowance. Seam allowance is the difference or measurement between the actual seam or hem and the end of the fabric. So this is 24 inches. I bought it that way. And so I want to fold this in half. I want to measure the 24-inch thing minus my head would be 3 inches. So we want a seam allowance of 1.5 inch. So I'm going to measure 1.5 inch from the edge. And that's where I want to put my seam. And when we do seams, we want to make sure that this extra part is flat. So when we sew it, it's nice and flat. Like so. Let me get done. Okay, so we want to mark this. And I'll mark it with a pen or a safety pin. Do I have a safety pin? No safety pins. And my little stash there. So I'll use a regular straight pin. Which is not, it's actually a sewing needle. But for the act of demonstration, we'll just pin it here. You want it to be. And we just poke it in, turn it around, and then up the other end, like so. And I think that moved. So, 1.5 inch. That's where we want it. So that's where we want it. It's really even. Okay. Yes, we sew things inside out. Okay. So, the thread. We want to make sure we have a thread that matches the fabric. And we always have a notch, as you can see right here. A notch. We hold the thread. Just take the thread out of the notch. There we go. Okay, so we want enough thread to double over and have enough room for sewing or seam. Which you can measure. I'll double up in half. You're like, well, how much do you know? Well, it does take practice, and you gotta make a lot of stitches, so, and you gotta have room to make a knot at the end, so it's always better to have too much than not enough. So you just cut at an angle. Okay, then we'll spread our sewing needle. And yes, there's larger needlepoint needles that are all different sizes. Not all needles are the same. There's two ways to thread something. My mom liked to do this. Put it between your teeth, lick it, make it nice and wet, and then poke it through the hole. Or if you have bad eyesight or not very nimble fingers, you can get the threader, put it through the hole, okay, and then you put the thread through the larger hole here. And the eye of the needle is the hole of the needle. And then you want to hang on to the thread and hang on to the threader because these little metal loops tend to pop out. You want to move your needle towards your thread. Thread needle for you. And that's how you use the needle threader. And you want to make sure to do your string in half. And then I like to do 2 knots to make sure it doesn't go through. And this is a large hole fabric, so I might do a few more. So we get nice and knotted. And try to get the knots on top of each other so you get a nice big hole, like so. And then you go right where we pinned. Just in a pin needle. Or you can use safety pins too. Then we just pick a side and we just put the needle through the fabric, both sides, and pull it all the way through. This is going to be the bottom of our fabric, and this is what we call sewing. And so we want to sew straight across, and that's what we call a seam. If it's on the end of a dress, we call it a hem. Okay. And I am known for crooked stitches, so you just sew here. Careful not to poke yourself. Then we want to make enough stitches to make a seam. So we want to move the stitches over like so. That just came out of my needle. Okay, how did that happen? Oh, that's the other needle. Oops. Okay. I think we got enough here. And then we just sew our seam, which is a straight line. Get it closed. Which, as you can tell, takes a lot of stitches. If you're using a machine, this would go a whole lot faster. But this is a small object. I'm not going to use a machine first. Such a small object. We just make a straight line with our stitches. Which you can't really see because the thread matches. which is kind of the point. And the things that are going to take a lot of stress like this, you probably want to do a couple rows, not just one. It's better to have too much than not enough. And one over crooked stitchery among my family. I can always hide something because the stitches are always crooked. And you can see, I'm making a seam so it doesn't come apart. And just make few here with our stitches. Make sure it stays put. And just keep sewing and make sure our seam is going to stay. These is curling. Okay, I think we stitched enough here. I don't think it's going to come loose. And 4 stitches here. Make sure it's nice and solid. Okay, when we're done, we just cut and make a knot. And since this might be under a lot of stress, we'll make a few knots. And excess thread is chop off. And then we put it the right side out and flatten our thing here. I saw too much, so not like that. So there we go. And then I have that. And then I want to do some extra. Okay, and to hide this little seam, I want to sew on a button. And some feathers, which I got off a cat toy, but you can find at fabric shops. So I'm going to do that plus this. Isn't that cute? And that will cover the seam. So, here are thread. And cut diagonally. There we go. Oh, there you go. Okay. Oh, extra. There we go. So, put the needle threader in the hole or the eye. And put our thread in. My mom always did. I'm sure some people think that's disgusting. Then we pull our needle through. Okay, this is long enough. We can do both items on our thing. Headband, I should say. And not at the end. And try to get another knot at the same place. And with our thick headband thing, another knot. So the thread doesn't go all the way through fabric. And there we go. Nice little knot. Okay, so there's a feather on here. Let me see. You watching the show? Okay. And so we want to start from the bottom and sew on our feather. Start on with this. Okay, so feather. It's a lot easier when we're not holding things up to demonstrate. Okay, wrap the thread around the feather. And make little stitches to make sure. Okay, get this out of the way here. Just make stitches and stitches and stitches. Okay, I think that's pretty secured. Okay. We just sew and poke ourselves. Might want crisscross too. Hold down here. Getting in here. This is secured on here. And the thread. Alright, let's stop here, running out of thread. Okay, last one. And then we cut the thread. And not so it doesn't unravel. That's why we need extra thread at the end. And the feathers in the thread. There we go. There's not. And I always like two. I don't think I can get on. Okay, so there's our feather secured on here. Let's go to the button. Hide the seam. And cut the egg line. I just have to have a sharp pair of scissors. Okay, our needle and our threader. And again, go through. And so it pretty much just takes practice to become an expert. I mean, I started out with 12, but didn't really get into it, so I'm not really much of an expert. Mother's a lot more of an expert because she likes to sew quilts. And she likes to do crafts like stuffed animals and stuff like that. But since my dad died, she doesn't really sew anymore. So, my sister uses her machine. Alright, so we got our knot. Now do the button, which is a shank button with the little thing on there. So we're going to put it right on top of the seam so we don't see the seam. So we're going to poke it through here. And then do our button. Situate it where we want it. And poke through. You can have it laid just right. Okay, and then through. Do the hole. And pull all the way. And then go back down. You can wrap it around our feather, make it double secured. And just pull through times, secure the button. And try to poke yourself. Okay, this is a shank button, so we don't need to do the thread shank. So, got plenty of room. Cut thread. And tie a big knot. It's secured. Secure the button. Excess thread. So if you got excess thread, it's quite alright. Don't need to worry about wasting it. Okay. New headband. So, check out my other videos. Bye.